What's cracking, y'all? You are now watching Boo TV. Appreciate you for stopping in. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, stay notified, and let's get into the topic for today. What's cracking, y'all? Thanks for stopping in. I was browsing the internet, came across a post by, I think, NBA ESPN, and with the 2024 NBA All-Star Game fast approaching, they have put out a fun little post that pitted the 2004 NBA All-Stars from each prospective conference against the 2024 All-Stars from each prospective conference, right? So, with that being said, I like these kind of things. I think they're kind of fun, so I thought I'd just give my opinion on it. So, for the purposes of this episode, we're just going to take a look at the Eastern Conference matchup, and then tomorrow I will post the Western Conference matchup. Now, when we look at these matchups, I'm going to be looking at it from a perspective of they're not playing in an all-star game. They are playing in a real 5-on-5 and trying to win. So, we'll start with the Eastern Conference All-Stars, all right? 20 years ago, the 2004 NBA All-Stars were Allen Iverson, T-Mac, Vince Carter, Jermaine O'Neal, and Ben Wallace. This season, the 2024 Eastern Conference All-Stars are Damian Lillard, Tyrese Haliburton, Jayson Tatum, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Joel Embiid. Now, I'll go over each matchups individually, and I'll provide the stats that each player was putting out, their production for that particular season, just so you can get an idea of what their performance level was like during that time. But I understand you got to add context to these things sometimes, different eras, things like that. So I'll just put like the base stats. So first, Allen Iverson versus Damian Lillard. In 2004, AI was averaging 27.6 points per game, 4.2 rebounds, and 5.5 assists. Damian Lillard averaging almost 25 points per game, 4.2 rebounds, and 6.8 assists. Just to give you an idea. These two players are, I guess you could say, roughly the same height. Allen Iverson's a tad bit shorter than Dame. I think Allen Iverson is definitely the better scorer of the two, and they both can score the basketball. I've seen Allen Iverson, especially, at his height, like I said, slightly smaller than Dame, but I've seen him consistently in his career be an elite scorer, a top scorer, and in his era, which was much more difficult to score the basketball in. So watching Allen Iverson score way back then was extremely impressive. While Allen Iverson is definitely the better scorer than Damian Lillard, Dame Time is without a doubt the better shooter. The better shooter. No question about it. Both of these guys aren't pure point guards. And I would have to say Allen Iverson, from the eye test, Allen Iverson is a little bit better of a playmaker than Damian Lillard was. And the scoring was much lower. That's why I said I'll just give you the stats to give you an idea, but you got to consider the era these guys played in and everything else. So, Allen Iverson's numbers would be much more if he played in today's era. I have to say that. Scoring was low, numbers were down altogether, but he was still getting them up. As far as defense goes, they're probably about the same on defense. Neither one of these guys were ever known for their defense. Each one of these guys didn't particularly have the itch to play defense at a high level like, say, a Jason Kidd did. I think neither one of these guys would be able to stop each other. I think Allen Iverson would pretty much score with ease against Damian Lillard, and I think the same for Dame. I think he would pretty much score at ease against Allen Iverson. Dame is definitely struggling a bit this year. I can honestly say that. And I'm going to have to do a video on him soon, to be honest. But I would have to give the slight edge to Allen Iverson. But like I said, a slight edge to Allen Iverson. Tracy McGrady averaged 32.1 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists. Tyrese Haliburton averaging 22.5 points per game,
4 rebounds, and 11.7 assists, getting close to 12 assists per game. This will be good. Both of these players are completely different kinds of players, to be honest with you. Tyrese Haliburton is a heavy assist guy, but he can also score the basketball. Tracy McGrady is one of the best scorers we've ever seen, without a doubt. And he's a damn good playmaker. I would say Tracy McGrady's scoring is to Tyrese Haliburton's playmaking and assists. And Tracy McGrady's playmaking is to Tyrese Haliburton's scoring. This was Tracy McGrady in his prime. Tyrese Haliburton, I don't think we've seen the best from this guy yet, so, more to come from that perspective. Tyrese Haliburton does a great job taking care of the basketball. Neither one of these guys were particularly great defensive players, but Tracy McGrady won't necessarily be guarding him so much as a scorer, but trying to make it difficult for him to get clean passes off, because he really takes care of the basketball and makes a lot of simple and good passes and puts it right on the money, good timing and all that. While on the other hand, Tyrese Haliburton is going to have his hands full with Tracy McGrady. Tyrese Haliburton is what, 6'5", maybe? Tracy McGrady is about 6'8" and has unlimited range and is hyper athletic, can take it to the cup, dunk on you, finish either hand, and has a mid-range game. Tracy McGrady could score from anywhere on the court, anywhere. So Tyrese Haliburton is going to struggle trying to stop tmac. He is. tmac is an aggressive scorer, and Tyrese Haliburton is going to have his hands full. It kind of sucks because, they don't really play the same, but Tracy McGrady is going to have less work to do on the defensive end than Haliburton. So I truly believe tmac is going to eat this boy up, and Tyrese is going to play the point guard position like he always does, and he'll make an impact. But on the one-on-one matchup, tmac's going to eat this boy up. Absolutely. Vince Carter averaged 22.5 points per game, 4.8 rebounds, 4.8 assists. Jayson Tatum averaged 27 points per game, 8.5 and 4.5 assists per game. This is an interesting one because you're looking at Vince Carter's stats, right? And you're like, how the hell was Vince Carter averaging 22.5 points in 2004? That seems really low. It was. I think the season before, he had only played half a season coming off an injury. I don't remember how bad that his injuries were nagging him. I know he had jumpers in a few years even before that, but I remember watching Vince in his All-Star game, and he looked completely healthy. He did some nasty dunks in that game, if I remember correctly. But this was the Vince Carter where he was in his prime, and a lot of Toronto Raptors fans still don't forgive him for this, is because he wasn't playing wholeheartedly his last 2-ish, 3-ish years with the Toronto Raptors. He wasn't. He was playing very unmotivated because it was very apparent Vince Carter didn't want to be in Toronto anymore. Now, that's a whole different story. But that's the reason why Vince Carter's numbers are low like they are right now. It was lack of motivation, lack of effort, and he just didn't want to be there. Because the minute Vince Carter got traded to the New Jersey Nets, he was one of the best players in the league like that. And of course you can imagine the Raptors fans were mad. Now all of a sudden Vince Carter averaging 26, 27, 28 points per game, hitting game winners, out there balling with the New Jersey Nets. So his production is based on him not playing to his full potential. And you can honestly say Vince Carter wasn't one of those guys that were motivated like Kobe Bryant was, to be honest. So when I look at the matchup, Vince Carter's definitely the smaller player. What is him? Vince is about 6'5", 6'6". Jayson Tatum is what? 6'8", I believe. Don't quote me on that, but somewhere around that. Obviously, we know the high flyer that Vince Carter is, supremely athletic. I mean, the greatest dunker of all time, one of the greatest athletes we've ever seen, highest jumpers we've ever seen. Vince Carter could, like Tracy McGrady, score from anywhere on the court, had the mid-range, had the three-point shot, was extremely clutch, all that. Vince Carter was phenomenal, and an underrated playmaker and passer at that. Jayson Tatum is one of the best scorers that we have in the NBA today. And Jayson Tatum is a far better defensive player than Vince Carter. When Vince Carter got to the Nets, he did step his defense up. He was a much better defensive player than he was on the Toronto Raptors. But still not as good as Jayson Tatum. As much as I could sit here and I want to say if Vince Carter was giving it his all, you know, I think Vince Carter would take Jayson Tatum's cookies. I can't say that, man, because it is what he was not. This version of Vince Carter was not in it. His heart was not in it. And Jayson Tatum has the defense and the length to make it a bit more difficult for Vince Carter. But I don't think this version of Vince Carter is going to give Jayson Tatum any fits by Vince Carter's defensive prowess. So as much as I love Vince Carter, he's one of my favorite players of all time, I'm going to have to go advantage 2024 All-Stars Jayson Tatum. Jermaine O'Neal averaged 20 points per game, 10 rebounds, 2 assists. Giannis Antetokounmpo sitting at 31, 11, and 6. I think this is pretty lopsided. And listen, I love Jermaine O'Neal. I was actually going to do an episode on Jermaine O'Neal this year and talk about him. He was, again, one of the those stretch forward players, man. Jermaine O'Neal could score in the post. Could score in the post. Jermaine O'Neal could shoot the mid range very well. Pretty solid defensive player. Jermaine O'Neal could play, man. He could play. I mean, I remember there was a time, I didn't believe this for a second, but people were trying to draw comparisons to Jermaine O'Neal and Shaquille O'Neal and give an argument for Jermaine O'Neal being a better player because he could stretch the floor and shoot the basketball and shoot free throws. I was like, that's all well and good, but no. But Giannis Antetokounmpo in a landslide. Giannis is far superior than Jermaine O'Neal in practically everything, with the exception of shooting the basketball. But Jermaine O'Neal isn't going to be able to do anything with Giannis Antetokounmpo. While Giannis Antetokounmpo could do a solid job with Jermaine O'Neal, even in the post, especially given Giannis's length, and he's deceptively strong. He really is. So this is pretty lopsided. Giannis Antetokounmpo. Ben Wallace averaged 9.5 points per game, 12.4 rebounds, 1.7 assists, and 3 blocks per game, compared to Joel Embiid's 36, 11, 5.7 blocks, 5.7 assists, and 1.8 blocks. 36, 11, 5.7, 1.8 for Joel Embiid. Now, this is this is just two completely different type of players matched up against each other. And I can tell you this, you're looking at it, see, you got to understand the game. You got to have watched the game. Somebody that doesn't know, that didn't watch basketball back then, probably don't even know who the hell Ben Wallace was, would look at this matchup and be like, this is going to be so lopsided. Ben Wallace, 9 points per game. No. Ben Wallace is one of the greatest defensive players we have ever seen in the history of the NBA. One of the few people that could do something with Shaquille O'Neal. Dennis Rodman, Ben Wallace, Hakeem, probably the top 3 players that I'd want to play defense on Shaq. Joel Embiid, 7 foot, 7'1", whatever he is, has been living in. The guy is playing amazing. Well, he's injured now. Playing amazing. The front runner for MVP. He was about to go back-to-back MVPs until the surgery he just had for the meniscus injury. But he's playing in this NBA where practically every night he is by far and away the largest player on the floor. A lot of small ball, so he can dominate in the paint. But Joel Embiid can also shoot out to the three-point line. He's a very skilled big man. But Joel Embiid has never in his life dealt with a defensive player like Ben Wallace. And Joel Embiid will experience a new brand of basketball And for the first time in maybe his entire career, Joel Embiid will feel completely limited when Big Ben, strong as hell, not even 7 foot. That's the other thing. Ben Wallace was what? 6'8", 6'9", something like that? Undersized. But out there, giving hell to about every center he was matched up against. He was part of arguably the greatest defensive team of all time. And he was the anchor on defense for that Detroit Pistons squad. That won the championship in 2004, by the way. Statistically, you might look at this, even if they match up. Of course, Wallace is going to make it very difficult for Embiid, but Embiid still have more points than Wallace because Ben Wallace isn't a scorer. Ben Wallace was the type of guy to just get putbacks, the garbage man, cleanups, those type of things. Nobody's running plays for Ben. But defensively, buddy. The rebounds ain't coming like they used to, Joel Embiid. Them shots ain't looking clean. There's going to be a lot of deflections. There's going to be blocks. There's going to be hands in your face. Your vision will be obscured. You're going to feel pain. It's going to be physical. And even if you say, oh, well, if you put him in this era, Ben Wallace was a clean defensive player. He could still be a great defensive player, even with the rules of today's NBA that doesn't allow the physicality and the hand check and all that. He was a smart defensive player, so he could adapt and still be a defensive force in the NBA today. That's just the type of defensive player Ben Wallace was. Of course, Joel Embiid, you look at the numbers, what he can do offensively and defensively. You got to say, okay, yeah, Joel Embiid, nod to Joel Embiid. But it's going to be struggle city for Joel. And when I look at it, is Joel playing up to his normal level with Ben Wallace on him? No. He's going to be a lesser version of himself. But will Ben Wallace perform to the level of Ben Wallace? Absolutely. However you want to look at it. Now, as far as a unit, and like I said, these guys are actually trying to win the game. This ain't no all-star game fluff. This is a competitive game. When I look at the 2024 All-Stars from a position perspective, I think they are more balanced and more fleshed out. You have your guaranteed point guard in Tyrese Haliburton with the ball in his hand, going to set people up. He is hands down the only true playmaker on that squad and the best one. You have your small, undersized shooting guard in Damian Lillard, who's pretty much looking to shoot the basketball and score. You got Jayson Tatum at the small forward, who can score from about anywhere on the court and play defense. You got your prototypical power forward, who can also play center, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, a force on both ends of the floor, and Joel Embiid, who could play 5 and even 4 if he needed to, both ends of the floor. And you got 2 7-footers in Joel Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Meanwhile, when I look at the 2004 Eastern Conference All-Stars, as a unit, I don't think from a position perspective they really mesh that well. There's no true point guard on this squad, and maybe you don't need one, but it definitely helps when you're talking about ball or tempo control, things like that, putting people in their positions, calling plays, organizing, things like that. They don't really have that prototypical point guard. You got a bunch of scorers with Allen Iverson, Tracy McGrady, and Vince Carter, who can mostly be all interchangeable. I've seen T-Mac play the 1 and the 2. I've seen Vince Carter even run the 1 and play the 2. Vince Carter and T-Mac could play the 1, 2, and 3, really. And maybe even McGrady possibly playing the 4, but he'd still be a bit undersized. But definitely 1, 2, and 3, without a doubt. Like I said, they have somewhat of a redundant skill set, Allen Iverson, T-Mac, and Vince Carter. But they all have playmaking capabilities. But primarily, you know what these guys are looking to do. They're looking to score the basketball. And while Ben Wallace is an anchor on the paint, they're not going to have anybody to dump the ball into down low if you're looking to run something from the inside. So as a unit, a cohesive unit, I think the 2024 All-Stars will mesh better together. But if the 2004 Eastern Conference All-Stars are, you got 3 elite scorers right here. So these guys can get you buckets in isolation, even though they don't necessarily mesh as a cohesive unit like the 2024 squad does. So you're going to have trouble stopping those 3 guys. They're going to put points up, and they're going to put points up in a hurry. And Jermaine O'Neal kind of just be floating, running some pick and pops, some pick and rolls, and being ready for the catch and shoot opportunities. But without a doubt, those 3 guys are going to give you hell scoring the basketball. And they really, unless they're running switches, Dame ain't going to be able to stop it. Tyrese ain't going to be able to stop it. Jayson Tatum could do a good job, but he's not necessarily locking any of these guys down. They're too elite. Could he neutralize them to some degree? Probably. To some degree, make it a little bit more difficult for him, but he's not stopping them. They'll still get their 28 points, maybe slightly lower efficiency. Maybe. They're so elite that I've seen this guy score over about anybody. So, but it would probably help them if they got hot to switch off and throw Giannis on them, to use that athleticism and length to try to make it more difficult for the T-Macs and the Vince Carters. But this could go either way, just with the dynamic shooting and scoring that the 2004 squad has. And they got the best defensive player on their team in Ben Wallace, but the 2024 All-Stars have more defensive players on. They have 3 solid defensive players, 3 elite defensive players. Actually, 2 elite and Giannis and Embiid, and a pretty damn good one in Jayson Tatum. I can say that. Individually, when I look at it, I might have to give the edge, the 2004 slight edge, but as a unit, 2024 All-Stars are taking this. It's just a better fleshed out roster. And it pains me to say that, because I love these guys. I love these 2004 guys. While I definitely believe that Ben Wallace would make things difficult for Joel Embiid, that matchup could actually prove beneficial for the 2024 squad, because with Joel Embiid's ability to stretch and shoot the mid-range and shoot the long-range jumper, if Ben Wallace is matched on him, that's going to pull Ben Wallace out of the paint. And there's not going to be any elite rim protection with Ben Wallace pulled out. And Giannis Antetokounmpo especially is going to be wreaking havoc on the inside, putting his head down, driving, while Embiid is pulling Ben Wallace away from the basket. It would probably be better for the 2004 squad if they put Ben Wallace on Giannis. He's given up a lot of height, just like he is with Embiid, really, but he's strong as hell. He can move his body. He has great hands. He has everything else you want from an elite defensive player. So he can match up with Giannis and have Jermaine O'Neal guard Joel Embiid. Now, it's going to be barbecue chicken for Jermaine O'Neal, whichever person he guards, Giannis or Embiid. But with Embiid pulling Jermaine out, that's still going to leave Ben Wallace either attached to Giannis or holding the paint down, depending on what type of defenses are being played. But I think that might probably be a little better for the 2004 squad, that matchup. But it doesn't guarantee him anything necessarily. But they'll probably be a little better off in the game that way. That's just my opinion. That's going to wrap it up for my opinion on this 2024 Eastern Conference All-Stars matchup. Please let me know what you think about it. Give your opinion, give your analysis on the situation, on the individual matchups themselves or the team matchups. I would love to hear your opinion on the comment section. Bring some points up that I failed to mention, because I want to hear everything you got. Let me know what you think about it, all right? Appreciate you guys. Be on the lookout for the Western Conference version of this episode coming up soon. We out, baby.